Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Yasmin Flores, and welcome back to the Arts at EPCC. With me this day, or evening, it doesn't matter, or night.
Or early morning.
Or in the middle of the night, right?
Whenever you watch your videos.
That's right, exactly. Is Michael Head from the Mass Comm department again.
Yes.
Hello, Michael.
Hello, thank you for bringing me back. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Didn't scare you off too bad the first time, I
No. Well, you're so fascinating that I knew I had to have you on again. I really appreciate you coming. So now, Mass Comm, I'd like to know what's going on. Oh, sorry, our plant. Hello, Mr. Plant. We need to give him a name now. George.
Christened George.
Ooh, I like it. George the Plant. Fantastic. He has a name now.
All right.
So, Michael, what's going on over in Mass Comm, especially for fall?
Well, we're gearing up, hopefully, with returning to semi-normal. I know we've talked about increasing class sizes again, so I'm hoping that students are able to get into classes better, because especially with some classes, they're much more effective when they're hands-on.
Sure.
It's hard to teach video production remotely, because sometimes you have to set up equipment, you have to put the cameras in the right place, you have to really get hands-on with the gear in order to really be effective in terms of helping the students achieve their best. You can do that somewhat remotely, but it's a whole lot more effective when you can actually get in, show them, walk them through it, and have them actually participate in it.
Sure.
So I know that's something that we're really looking forward to. And I know a lot of students they like doing in-person classes much more than doing the remote classes. So I think as we get back into the classroom, I think students are going to be more comfortable. I hope professors are going to be more comfortable in terms of, again, getting in front of people, not having to rely so much on the remote processes. But I also hope we've kind of grown from that too, because the world we're living in is so connected and so online that best practices are going to be best practices no matter what. And we can incorporate things we've learned at this time to improve, even as we go back in person, still keep some of those things that work best for student success.
Right. I love that answer. That sounds like you read it out of a EPCC manual.
Yeah. Well, I really just made it up. So
oh, okay.
You don't see the teleprompter on right there.
Right, yeah, exactly. Let me ask you this question. Now, okay, let's open up this can of worms.
Uh-oh.
I know. So I'm in my office. I get there about 3 o'clock, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Those are my office hours. And diagonal to me is Michael Head. Next to me is Melissa Aguilera, who we had on the show for Pulse Radio, as a matter of fact. And so each day I get to my office drained, because your grandchildren and your children and your nieces and your nephews, okay, don't speak. They sit there in my class and they don't speak. And so we had this discussion.
Yes.
A few problems. Number one, absences. It's always an issue. That's an issue as old as me. Okay.
But this semester.
This semester's been very rough. And so listen to me, you all out there. Okay, I'm trying not to point at the camera. But so you and I, we've talked a little bit about this and our frustration. I just got out of class. I ran over here from my 10 a.m.
Oh, wow.
And so I kind of picked their brains for about 5 minutes, and I said, so I asked the question, okay, 4.51, all right, and I played it for them. And I said, okay, so who wants to go over the solfege with me? And I'm behind a piano, by the way, so I've got this upright piano in front of me, and I'm looking at them, and I'm looking around, and so I picked on somebody, and I said, would you like to sing 4.51 with me? And he said no. And I was like, ah.
I have to ask, what class is this? Just
Sight singing.
Oh.
Right. Sight singing and ear training one. Yes. And so the purpose of the class is to sing. And so then I got up from the piano and I walked around the room and I said, now, so here's one suggestion I've heard from a professor, and you can tell me if you agree or what your take is. Is it that they're afraid of failure in front of other people?
To a point, I kind of think that is. And that's... I've seen kind of some weird culture shifts in... I would really say probably starting in the 1990s. And I grew up in I was a high schooler in the late 90s.
We're about the same age.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
There's this kind of, you hear this kind of derogatory term. I say it's derogatory, and I think it's not a good thing. Where the idea that was prevalent for a while is everybody gets a trophy.
Oh,
and
yes.
To a point that was true for some people, not for everybody.
Right.
But it was prevalent enough that, what was the? I was walking through, I know, it's going to be related, trust me. I was walking through Walmart the other day. I was walking into Walmart, and this lady was there with probably maybe a 6 or 7-year-old child. And the child said, why didn't I just overheard their conversation. She said, why didn't I get a toy? I was good in Walmart. And the mom said, you don't get a prize for doing what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And that's a very interesting idea.
Yeah.
We kind of have gotten to this point where meeting minimum expectation is something that has been applauded.
And rewarded.
Yes.
And
that's not necessarily long-term good. Now, you have to take that into account of the individual as well. Because some students, they're going to be able to sing about just off the top of their head,
right,
regardless. And
right,
you could play 3 notes and they'd play 4. I went to college with a guy, he had perfect pitch. It was so annoying.
Oh yes, those are
fantastic guy. I loved him to death.
We have one in the department, and and I feel sorry for them, because if I'm 10 cents off,
they know.
They know, and so they're like sitting there going like, Dr. Flores, that's not a C, that's not a C, right? The whole time.
But you have that other end of students that really are struggling, and we have to accommodate both. Both challenging the one that's doing really, really well, but also helping that one that is struggling to get to that point.
Sure.
And for some people that is recognizing you made this small change that's good. We need to award that, because that was a struggle for you. Right. But you have to balance that with the person that can tell if you're 10 cents off. And that is the real challenge. Right. And so that the student, let's assume those 2 students are in the same classroom.
Right, sure.
This student that struggles is not, it's fear of failure. They don't want to look bad in front of this person. Yeah. And I always tell my students, they do presentations, and I said, everybody's doing a presentation, period, in the film appreciation class. And I always, this was my perspective whenever I was doing presentations in class. I volunteered to go first.
Interesting.
Because I was like, I don't want to have to be behind somebody and think, I have to follow that?
That's a good point. Right.
I'm like, no, get me done first. I'm out of the way. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Right. That was my personal perspective on things. But you also have those students that they don't feel as confident about it, and that's this challenge of meeting the needs of all the students. Right. But also addressing the fact that failure is there, and they're afraid of failure. They're afraid of somebody saying, "This is." I almost think it's more internal. Because they're like, I'm not good enough, and and that's a fight that I always tell the students in film production. I tell tons of stories that I've read about and heard about. I don't remember. Did we talk last time about Peter Jackson and Lord of the Rings? No.
Or maybe we did. You know what?
I'm trying to remember.
It's early dementia with me. I don't know. Maybe we did talk about it.
When somebody's trying to make a professional movie, they make a pitch. And they say, this is my project, this is what I want to make, and they go to a studio and they say, give me the money to do this. Peter Jackson, he'd made a couple of little bitty short budget films, but then he wanted to make this massive, huge, big budget Lord of the Rings movie. Right. And so he pitched to a studio. First studio said, oh no. Second studio said, no. Third studio, no. He literally, the story goes, he went to every single studio in Hollywood, and they all rejected him except for this one tiny little studio called New Line. Oh. And they said, you know what, we're going to take a chance on this. and it paid off.
Right.
But imagine it's the whole Thomas Edison 86 ways to not make a light bulb.
Right.
You can't be so afraid of failure that you don't try. And I tell my students, especially in film, and I guess I'm assuming music is the same way, you got to have thick skin.
Yeah.
Because people are going to, regardless of how good or bad, whatever it is you do, if you make the most brilliant movie and win the Oscars like the other night, somebody is not going to like it.
Right.
You have to have thick skin.
Yeah.
And when you apply, and I tell them this is not just in film. If you apply for a job, they might tell you no. And you have to keep going.
Right.
You don't get to sulk.
Yeah.
Because they said no.
Yeah.
And you're going to try and sell a product to someone. They're going to say no. You have to keep going. That's part of growing up. And it is a hurdle, I think. And I going all the way back to that everybody gets a prize. That's kind of hurt that, because they're at the point they don't want to stretch themselves, because the idea of meeting minimum expectations has been rewarded. That, oh, if I fail,
yeah,
what's going to happen? It's just looks bad. That's my perspective on it.
Absolutely. It's the same discussion I just had with them. I mean, different, I was using obviously some different stories and such, but I said, nobody's going to die. If you're flat, nobody's going to die, right? And nobody's going to make fun of you. I don't know if they picture in their mind that it's like you see in the movies you see on TV sometimes, where you'll pop into somebody's head, into their mind. I think of Scrubs, for example, right? And everybody's laughing like, oh, ha, 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 ha. I'm like, did you hear that? He sounded awful. Like, what are they thinking? Are they, I don't know if that's what the students are picturing in their minds. And so you touch on so many different things that I discussed today, and also in this morning's interview as well, which was what you just said, the 86 ways to fail at making a light bulb. And
I don't know if it was 86. I made it.
Okay, yeah,
so.
Right. Whatever the number is, we can look it up later, right? But it's so true, because I told that story at some point this morning. I said, how many publishers did I email to try to get my stuff published? Many. Yeah. And I still have the letter from Theodore Presser. I still have the letters, and Madonna some of those letters have been released when she released her first album. I know there's a website that shows you the letters that she received back from all these studios that were like, no, thank you. Like, we don't have time for you because you don't sound like so-and-so. Or whoever it was, and this was Madonna, right? The same thing happened. I'm trying to remember the group's name right now. Help me. They sang One.
I don't listen
Bono.
to a lot of pop. U2.
Thank you.
There you go.
I couldn't think of it. It was like, I said Bono. That was it. Yeah. U2 also has a lot of these letters you can find online, where they submitted their first cassette tape back in the roaring 80s or 70s. And it was like, no, the studios listened to it and they said they didn't like it. And they wanted, and then there's always the molding. Right, and this happens more on your side of the fence, where it's like, oh, that's pretty good, but let's try to get you to sound more like so-and-so, right? And so I always find that fascinating too. So in film, so right now, let's talk a little bit about our classrooms and how they're about to convert as well. I told the class this morning, I said, did you know that there's supposed to be a row of students in between here? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, this room is at 20 for COVID, but the real capacity is 40. And it blew their minds. It blew their minds.
Is that the class limit though?
That is the cap on the room. Okay. I should say the cap on the room, not the class. The class,
because I know class sizes are
different from the cap. Yeah. So the cap of the room is 40. Because we're at 50% right now. And so they allowed me to have 20 students in the class. 19 signed up, and I was like, yay, right? But because then I could meet with them every day. But yeah, when I told them, I said, look, there's supposed to be rows of people. You aren't going to be 6-7 feet apart anymore. They were in such shock, like,
well, after 2 years, we've gotten so accustomed to that.
I know.
And
Yeah.
I don't really know what else to say about that. It's just we've gotten so accustomed to kind of that world that as we're transitioning out of that,
Right.
back into kind of quote unquote normal. What is normal now?
Right. 2 years.
I don't know.
2 years to an 18-year-old. That's what I just told them. I said 2 years to an 18-year-old is a long time.
That is 1/9 of their life.
1/9 of their life. Good for you. He figured it out. He does math. Hello.
We were talking about my problems with math. I don't know how I did that so fast.
And you just figured. Congratulations. I'm going to give you a certificate.
Well, I also think about I have a 4-year-old, and that's been half of her life.
Right. There's children that don't understand why they're taking the mask off now. I'm like, whoa, whoa, because they're asking, like, we're not going to put our mask on? Like, why? Like, why are we not going to? But I have to cover myself up. It's weird. And I'm very curious about that generation.
It's going to be,
It's going to be very weird for those kids when they get to our classrooms in 15, 16 years.
Well, hopefully in the intervening 14 some odd years, they are able to shift and things don't
completely fall apart.
We have the next plague or whatever it is that's going to happen.
I know. Yeah, and it's so fascinating to me. And I told him, I said, I relate everything back to my grandfather. I said, Christmas, his last Christmas, my grandfather's last Christmas, he was 87 when he died. He was kind of shocked that we were taking the Christmas tree out again because we had just put it away in his mind. Well, yeah, 87 Christmases. After a while, it's like, didn't you just put that darn thing away?
Yeah, no, it's and again, I've told you my brain works really weird. This is what I've noticed as people get older is the time, and I think for me it's accelerated when I had my daughter. The perception of time has altered.
Right.
Because things seem to be going at a different rate.
Yes.
And of course it hasn't. Time is pretty much constant.
Yes.
But how we perceive things.
Yeah.
For my 4-year-old, that's half her life, 2 years of what we've been going through. And she doesn't even remember probably before that because she was 2.
Right. Yeah.
And something I realized is when I had my 30th birthday, this was a weird thing for me. Because I had this sudden revelation. I pointed this out at somebody else's 30th birthday later. And I was like, think about how long you've been alive.
Right.
I guess 30 years. Now think about this. You have that same amount of time plus 5 years before you even get to retire. And I was like, oh my goodness. I hope they didn't peek out the microphones when I got loud right there for a second.
No, Marco gets on me about the microphones all the time. Trust me, I'll get a scolding right now when we're done with this show.
But that perception of time where you're 30, you still have that much time again plus more.
Yes.
Before we even start thinking about retirement, and and retirement by itself is a whole other conversation.
Right. I'm not going to retire.
I never want to.
No.
I would get too bored, I think.
Exactly. I admire the faculty that we still have with us. And I won't say that they're in their 80s, but they're.
But you kind of just did.
Yeah, but I admire that because you know what, they're an institution of themselves, like in and of themselves, because it's like, there's somebody that's retiring soon. I won't say who, but when I found out yesterday, I was like, what? No, we need that person because if anything ever goes wrong, that was the go-to.
Yeah. They knew how to fix stuff.
They knew how to fix it.
Yep.
And it was like, well, I don't know how to do this. This happened in 1982. Let me tell you what we're going to do. This happened in 1993. Let me tell you what we're going to do.
And what happens when this generation right now that is scared of failure, they're the ones that people are looking to.
Oh.
What's that going to look like?
Right.
Because that's going to be very different.
It is. It is.
I don't even have an answer to that. I keep asking these questions. I'm just like kind of getting sad. Like, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that before.
But here's something and I want to mention this because I do have a fascination with generations. So we finally, a few weeks ago, I finally came to accept that I'm Generation X.
Gen X.
Because for a while there, I was entertaining that I was a millennial. And I was like, Yasmin, I had to have a sit down with myself in front of the mirror and say, listen, your go-to when you have to take notes is not your cell phone. It's pen and paper, okay? Because you were born in 1980, all right? So let's rein it in.
You're younger than me.
Am I?
Yeah, I was 79.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
All right, yeah. And so I'm sitting here going, like, you know what?
That means... Oh, sorry. I didn't interrupt.
No,
Keep going,
you're
keep going,
fine.
keep going.
No, I was going to say, yeah, it's like, if you start asking that question, what is your knee-jerk reaction when you have to do something? Is it to get a pen and paper and write it down? Is it, I'm still the person, I still have a checkbook. I still have a checkbook. I mean, I kind of wonder if this, I should ask them in class.
They don't.
I should ask.
I don't have a checkbook.
You don't have a checkbook?
I don't.
Wow.
I have checks,
Yeah.
but I actually like keep them at home.
Yeah.
I very rarely actually use them.
True. And so many places don't accept them anymore.
I know. Or they accept it and it's like immediate, here's your check back.
Oh,
they
right,
just
right.
debited your account. I'm like,
Right, exactly. Or they take
there's
a
no
picture.
float anymore? I need like 3 days. That's
Exactly.
No, what I was going to say, you and I, there's a micro generation that is talked about now. And I forget what the name of it is. It's between 76 and 83. Because that's a generation did not grow up as digital natives.
Right.
But they adopted the digital world very quickly.
Yes.
Like our generation can pick up technology very quickly. I try to explain an iPad to my parents and they're still just like,
Oh, right.
how do I do this besides FaceTime? I'm like,
Right.
just use FaceTime.
Right.
And my parents will call me all the time, like, my computer's doing this. I'm like, it's a scam, don't do that. Don't touch it. Don't reply to that email. Do not click that. Just don't.
Exactly. Same conversation with somebody at home. I won't mention names. Anyway, it begins with M and ends with M. And there's an O in the middle.
But that's also something that our students, that generation, the younger generation, they're digital natives. They grew up with all that.
Right.
And that's something that's a hard connection for a lot of us to make with them.
Right.
Is because our go-to isn't, I'm just going to Google this.
Right.
Our go-to is, let me look at the library. And the card catalogs don't even exist anymore. I
know.
But our thought is still not first to, let me pull out my phone and find the answer. And that's a different mindset.
It is.
And it is, could that play into the fear of failure? Where they're saying, I need an instant answer right away.
That's true.
I don't know. That's something just occurred to me.
So there's Generation X. Generation Y is 96? Is that 1996?
Gen X.
No, Gen X, I'm sorry, finished in 81. So millennials start in 81, which is Generation Y.
Yeah. Goes up
And then
until
it goes through 96.
Okay.
Around-ish.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's Gen Z. And if they were born in 96, how long that's the kids we have right now. And I say kids.
96 to
2010-ish?
Yeah.
Yes. Or it might be more recent than that because now we've got Alpha.
I've not even heard about that one.
Yeah, your daughter is Alpha.
I believe that.
Yeah. And they are supposed to be the saving grace.
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so.
But here's my point with all the generations. I think that a lot of these labels and a lot of these suggestions that have come with the generations, it's all about the previous generation that is labeling it. And it's not that the generation's bad.
Yeah.
Because everybody complained about Gen X.
And we complained about baby boomers. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and so every generation, and now then we complain about millennials, and now we're complaining about Generation Z. But you know what? Everybody has their gift.
Oh yeah, everybody has an area of expertise.
Yes.
And that digital, that searching for the answer quickly, can be a good thing.
Oh,
if they know how to do it. And I say that as a Gen Xer, I've been taught how to research. I've been taught how to analyze sources.
Sure.
And that's part of something that when you're looking for an immediate answer, kids that grew up with a cell phone at 10, where they could jump on Google and look for something.
Sure.
They weren't necessarily taught how to evaluate what they're reading. That's something that I've noticed is sometimes they'll just grab the first website and say, oh, this is it. And then of course, and when you think about that in relation to SEO, search engine optimization, I used to do this thing with my students when we talked about research. if you used to Google, it's not this anymore, and I'm really glad about that. If you used to Google Martin Luther King Jr., from about, and I would pull this up in my classroom, 2006, the first link was this Martin Luther King Jr. You click on it. If you start reading through it, it was not a good thing. It was terrible. It was all this horrible stuff about Martin Luther King Jr. But it's very subtle the way they did it. So what I did was I taught my students to go down to the bottom, and at the bottom of the website there's like a documentation, like the date and the company that made it. And the company that made the website was called Stormfront. And so, well, what is Stormfront? So we Stormfront, Google that, white nationalist community. And they had made a website about Martin Luther King Jr. that was the very first Google result for a long time. Now, Google has changed since then. You can still find that website, and I still will point it out to my students, because I think it actually has a disclaimer on it now. You click on it, it's like, this website might be... But I always told the students about that, because clicking on the first link does not necessarily give you the answer you want. And then you have to think about ads and people that have paid to be at the top of Google, because that is a thing that happens.
That's it. Exactly.
So it is about, they can find fast answers, but is it a good answer? That's something that's kind of the balancing act with the instant results, but yes, are they good results? And so everything you're saying is so fascinating, and my camera person is already telling me we're at the 2-minute mark, and I could sit here all day and discuss all of these things, because I want to. It's for YouTube, you know. It's just.
I know, right? But you know, it's so fascinating, and I just want everyone to know before we end today, how much we care about our students, and it's not to point out any deficiencies or anything like that. It's more just a matter of, we want to help you, and
we're concerned. You and I were commiserating, like, how do we and this is the only semester I've been really worried. I will say that. Please help us, guys. Please. We want you to be good. We want to help you.
Exactly. So, Michael, I have to say thank you so much for being on the show. It flies by. 30 minutes to us now.
30 minutes? Jeez.
30 minutes. Yeah, 30 minutes to us goes by in 2 minutes to you out there. And so thank you so much for being on the show. And I will have you on again, looking forward to what Mass Comm has coming down the pipeline.
We have the next play, Black Box. We are recording so that's going to be coming up pretty soon. I don't know when it's going to come out. It's going to be soon.
Very good.
We have a mixer with students, film students and theater students soon, which I'm very excited about.
Wonderful.
We did it before COVID, and then COVID happened, and so we're doing it again. So.
Okay, wonderful. Michael, we'll have you on the show again, because you're a fun guest to have.
Anytime.
Awesome. All right, thank you, everybody. And check out our other episodes on YouTube. Just type in EPCC TV and the arts at EPCC. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.